You know, I never really thought of myself as the kind of person who would sit down and tell strangers my life story. I've always been the quiet one in the background. The guy who shows up on time, does the work, doesn't make a fuss, and just assumes that if you keep your head down and give your best, eventually people will notice. That's how I was raised, and that's how I lived for years. I worked as an accountant. Not the most glamorous job in the world, I know, but I liked it. Numbers make sense. They don't lie, they don't play politics. They either add up or they don't. And in a world where people twist words and bend the truth, I always found some kind of comfort in the cold, hard certainty of a balance sheet. When I first started at the company, it was just supposed to be a job. I didn't walk in with dreams of climbing the ladder or being some executive. I just wanted stability. A paycheck, benefits, maybe enough security that I wouldn't lie awake at night worrying about rent. That was it. But then I started noticing things. Small errors in reports, little inconsistencies in invoices. At first, I figured, hey, people make mistakes. That's normal. But then the mistakes started stacking up. And they weren't small. Some of them could have led to massive penalties if the government caught them. Others were the kind of thing that could have caused clients to walk away. So I fixed them. Quietly. Without telling anyone, I just corrected the numbers, adjusted the reports, and made sure things balanced. It wasn't about being a hero. It was just instinct, really. If I saw a fire, I'd put it out. And I thought that's what I was doing, putting out little fires before anyone noticed. But the more I dug in, the more I realized the whole place was practically burning. Sloppy bookkeeping, missing records, misreported revenue. It was a miracle the company hadn't already been audited into the ground. And there I was, some nobody accountant in the corner office, holding the whole damn structure together with duct tape and late nights. I can't even count the number of evenings I stayed long after everyone else had left. The janitor would stop by and say goodnight, and I'd still be there, double-checking, cross-referencing, running numbers 3-4 times just to make sure they lined up. I was tired, sure, but there was a weird sense of pride in knowing I was keeping the company afloat. Like, maybe they didn't see me, but my work mattered. Over the years, I saved them millions. And I don't mean that in some exaggerated way. Actual millions. By catching mistakes, preventing penalties, and streamlining processes, I kept money in their pockets that they didn't even realize they were about to lose. Sometimes I'd hear the higher-ups bragging in meetings about how well the company was doing, and I'd sit there quietly, thinking, yeah, you're welcome. Because without me, those numbers wouldn't look nearly as shiny. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't even expect a promotion. But I thought, eventually, someone would notice. Someone would see the late nights, the accuracy of the reports, the fact that year after year, we somehow avoided disaster. And then one day, I thought, maybe I should just ask. Maybe I should walk into that office and say, hey, I've been here a long time, I've proven myself. Maybe it's time we talk about a raise. I practiced it in my head for weeks. I hate confrontation. I hate even asking for small favors, like a ride or a day off. But I told myself, this isn't selfish. You've earned this. You've given so much, and it's not wrong to want to be valued. So I went in. I sat across from my manager, heart pounding in my chest, palms sweating, and I laid it out. Not everything. I didn't list every mistake I'd fixed or every dollar I'd saved, but enough to say, I've been dedicated, I've worked hard, I've made a real impact here, and I'd like to discuss a raise or maybe some recognition. Do you know what he did? He laughed. Actually laughed. Like I'd told the funniest joke in the world. Then he leaned back in his chair and said something I'll never forget. You do your job. That's what you're paid for. Don't start thinking you're some kind of savior. I just sat there, stunned. I thought maybe he was joking, but no, he was dead serious. He told me that everyone was replaceable, that the company didn't owe me anything beyond my paycheck, and that I should be careful about overestimating my importance. I left that meeting feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. All those nights, all that effort, all those years of protecting them from disaster, and in his eyes, I was just another cog. Nothing more. I tried to shake it off. Told myself maybe he was just having a bad day. But the truth hit me slowly. They never saw me the way I saw myself. To them, I wasn't the guy saving the company millions. I was just the quiet accountant in the corner. Invisible. A few weeks later, I got called into AntiWork. They said they were restructuring. That word, you know, is just corporate language for cutting people loose. They told me my position was being eliminated, but I knew better. They weren't eliminating anything. They were getting rid of me, because in their eyes, I was replaceable. I walked out of that building with a cardboard box in my hands and a knot in my stomach. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. At first, I thought, fine. I'll find another job. I've got experience, I've got skills, I'll land on my feet. But it wasn't that easy. The job market was brutal, and every rejection email chipped away at me. I went from being the guy who held a company together to being the guy who couldn't even land an interview. Bills piled up. I cut back on everything. No dinners out, no new clothes, nothing extra. Just rent, utilities, and food. Even then, some months I had to choose which bill to pay late. I'd sit there staring at my bank account, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the doubt. The voice in my head that kept asking, what if they were right? What if I wasn't special? What if I was just replaceable? What if all those years of work didn't mean anything? I can't explain the kind of loneliness that settles in when you start believing you don't matter. Friends would tell me to keep my chin up, that things would get better, but at night, alone in my apartment, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, thinking maybe I was just fooling myself all along. There were moments I wanted to give up. Just stop trying. Maybe settle for some dead-end job that barely paid the bills, except that this was my life now. But something in me wouldn't let go. Some stubborn little ember that refused to die out. One day, sitting at my tiny kitchen table with overdue bills spread out in front of me, I thought, if they don't see my value, maybe I should stop waiting for someone else to give me permission to prove it. Maybe I should build something myself. The idea scared the hell out of me. Starting a business? Me? I wasn't a risk taker. I wasn't bold or flashy. But I knew numbers. I knew how to keep things straight, how to dig into records and find the truth. And more than anything, I knew what it felt like to be treated as if you didn't matter. So I made a decision. I was going to start my own accounting firm. Not some big, shiny corporation. Just a small office, focused on honesty and transparency. No games, no cutting corners, no treating people like they were disposable. At first, it was rough. I rented a tiny space above a laundromat. I bought a used desk and a second-hand chair. My first computer was so old it sounded like a jet engine when it booted up. But it was mine. For the first time, I wasn't working to protect someone else's empire. I was building something of my own. I started with small clients. Local businesses, freelancers, people who needed someone reliable but couldn't afford the big firms. I charged fair rates, answered every question, and treated them like they mattered. Because they did. Every client wasn't just a paycheck to me. They were a chance to prove that the way I did things had value. The growth was slow. There were nights I sat in that little office wondering if I'd made a mistake. Times when I was one missed client payment away from not making rent. But slowly, word began to spread. One client recommended me to another. Then another. People appreciated the honesty. They appreciated that I explained things in plain language, that I never hid fees, that I answered the phone myself instead of sending them to voicemail hell. They trusted me, and trust, I realized, was the most valuable currency of all. As the months turned into a couple of years, I started to see something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. My client list grew, my revenue stabilized, and for the first time since I'd been fired, I wasn't lying awake at night wondering if I was worthless. I wasn't there yet. Not by a long shot. But I could feel it, the quiet determination building inside me. Like maybe, just maybe, I was finally on the path I was meant to be on. The thing about starting from scratch is that you learn humility real fast. For a long time, I was just the guy above the laundromat, scribbling numbers on spreadsheets and praying that clients would pay on time. Every small victory felt huge. A signed contract, a thank you email, a referral, it was fuel. I started putting everything I had into the business. Not just my skills, but my values. Honesty, patience, transparency. I never wanted my clients to feel like they were just files in a cabinet. I called them back the same day. I explained tax codes in plain English. If I made a mistake, I owned up to it and fixed it fast. That kind of approach doesn't scale easily, but in the early years, it set me apart. Slowly, I upgraded. First a better computer. Then a printer that didn't jam every third page. Eventually, I moved into a real office, small but professional. Nothing fancy, just enough to make clients feel like they were walking into a business and not someone's spare bedroom. I hired my first employee after 2 years. A part-time assistant who handled phone calls and helped organize files. She was nervous, I was nervous. We were both trying to figure it out. But having someone believe in what I was building, even just enough to take the job, meant the world to me. Then came the turning point. I landed a client that was bigger than anything I'd had before. They weren't huge, but they were established, and they'd been burned by their previous firm. They came to me because they'd heard I was reliable. I worked day and night on their books, combing through years of sloppy reports, and when I presented my findings, they were floored. I saved them a significant amount in potential penalties. It felt like déjà vu, exactly what I'd done at my old job, except this time, someone actually said thank you. Word spread faster after that. Clients started seeking me out, not just for accounting, but for trust. My reputation became my advertising. I didn't need billboards or slick marketing campaigns, just results and integrity. And then, almost like fate, one day I got a call from a company that used to be one of my former employer's biggest clients. I knew their name immediately. They'd been with my old firm for years. The voice on the phone explained, politely but firmly, that they weren't happy with the service they'd been getting. They wanted a fresh start. They wanted me. I can't describe the rush of emotions I felt. Part of me was thrilled. Part of me was terrified. But mostly, it was a sense of justice, like the universe was finally tipping the scales back in my favor. Taking them on was a challenge. They were complex, with layers of accounts and regulations. But I gave it everything. I treated them like gold, and they rewarded me with loyalty. And once they left, others followed. Slowly, one by one, the pillars holding up my old employer's business began to crumble. I wasn't trying to destroy them. Honestly, at first, I was just trying to survive. But it was impossible not to notice the pattern. The very clients I used to work so hard to protect on their behalf were now calling me, sitting across from me in my office, thanking me for the work I did. Every time it happened, I felt that quiet, almost poetic sense of balance. Meanwhile, I heard whispers. Former coworkers would reach out, telling me the company wasn't doing so well. The new hires they brought in after me didn't last long. Mistakes piled up. Clients got frustrated. Management tried to spin it like everything was fine, but the cracks were showing. I'd be lying if I said I didn't take a little satisfaction in that. After years of being told I was replaceable, it was almost surreal to watch reality prove the opposite. They could replace my chair, my nameplate, my job title. But they couldn't replace the work I did, the trust I built, the value I created. That wasn't just a role, it was me. Success didn't come overnight, and it wasn't without struggles. There were still plenty of moments when I doubted myself. Running a business is exhausting. There were tax seasons where I barely slept, times when I wondered if I was in over my head. But every hurdle I cleared, every milestone I reached, felt like another piece of myself falling back into place. Years passed, and I grew from a guy with a desk above a laundromat to the owner of a respected firm. I had employees, I had systems, I had a reputation that spoke louder than I ever could. And one day, I found myself walking into a client's office, one of the biggest contracts I'd ever landed, and realizing, almost in disbelief, that they were the very heart of my old employer's business. The same client my former boss used to brag about in meetings, the one they always treated like untouchable royalty. Now, they were mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in anyone's face. I just shook their hand, thanked them for trusting me, and promised to do right by them. And I did. Not long after, I heard through the grapevine that my old company had lost more than half its major accounts. Management was scrambling, trying to figure out how things had fallen apart so quickly. Some blamed the market. Some blamed difficult clients. But the truth was simple. They underestimated the one person who kept their ship from sinking. I think about that sometimes. About the day I walked out of their building with my box of things, feeling like a failure. About the nights I lay awake, wondering if I was worthless. And then I think about where I am now, the business I built, the clients who trust me, the employees who count on me. There's no big cinematic moment of revenge. No dramatic confrontation where I storm into their office and announce that I've stolen their clients. Life doesn't work that way. Instead, it's quieter, slower, more poetic. It's watching the empire that mocked me collapse under its own arrogance, while the small seed I planted above a laundromat grows into something strong and steady. And the best part? It's not even about them anymore. Sure, there's satisfaction in knowing they were wrong about me, but the real victory is the life I've built. The freedom, the respect, the sense of worth that no manager can laugh away. I used to think being replaceable meant I didn't matter. But I see it differently now. The truth is, in their world, everyone is replaceable, because they never cared enough to see people as individuals. In my world, every client, every employee, every person matters. That's why I succeeded where they failed. Sometimes, late at night, I'll sit in my office after everyone's gone home. I'll look around at the desks, the files, the quiet hum of computers. And I'll remember the janitor saying goodnight to me all those years ago, when I was the last one in the building, fixing mistakes for people who didn't care. Now, when I'm the last one in the building, it's different. I'm not patching holes for ungrateful bosses. I'm building something real, something lasting. And in that quiet, I feel a peace I never thought I'd find again. They told me I was replaceable. But the truth is, they were the ones who were disposable. Their arrogance, their ignorance, their refusal to value people, that's what destroyed them. And me? I survived. I rebuilt. I proved them wrong without ever having to say a word. That, to me, is victory. Not loud, not flashy, not vengeful. Just calm, steady, undeniable justice.